Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar series, A Senior's Guide to Building a Modular ADU. This is part 8 of 10, titled Choosing Your Backyard Home. This is the fun part. This is brought to you by Mr. John Aronson, President and owner of Crest Backyard Homes, and myself, Jeremy Knock, President and owner of Golden Age Financial Solutions. Today, we have a very special guest speaker today with us, Mr. Greg Nicholas. So we'll be introducing him in just a second. Keep in mind, folks, this series is designed to take you from the initial idea of the modular ADU through the certificate of occupancy using the HECM loan to maximize your cash flow. This is brought to you every Tuesday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. The sessions are recorded. They'll be available to share and watch later. FYI, if you want to adjust the size of your the webcams, there's a bar on the side. You can make them much smaller so that you can see more of the presentation. We will be addressing all the questions at the end for the Q&A portion. So today we're going to be exploring the different options you have and how some of these choices can affect or be affected by the new ADU laws when it comes to choosing the actual backyard home itself. We'll be walking you through the most popular floor plans, architectural styles to choose from, and the different options when it comes to roofs and the roofing materials. That being said, I'd like you to introduce our special guest, Mr. Greg Nicholas. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you please be so kind? Oh, thank you. Would you just give us all just a brief introduction about you and your background regarding ADUs?
Well, without going back too far, California has had a similar, an ADU type of law since primarily since 2003, with no changes until 2016, or actually first of 2017, which we had some dramatic changes to the law. 2017, 18, 19, and then we had some, again, major changes to ADU law, which allowed more units, which allowed units with multifamily, which reduced fees, which reduced requirements for parking. So the state legislature and the governor have really gone after the ADUs and how they can provide additional housing units throughout the state. I've been involved with the ADU program since mid to late 2016, and we're just trying to keep up with what our lawmakers are doing and providing technical assistance to citizens and cities and counties.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Greg. We're so glad again that you could join us today for this event. Now, John, would you please walk us through some of the most common floor plans that we're seeing today?
Yeah, we have, thanks, Greg. Really appreciate your tuning in today. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us once again. And I hope you're enjoying your vacation there, Jeremy. Anyway, getting back to the business at hand here, we've got over a dozen manufactured and modular ADU purveyors that we work with, and literally hundreds of floor plans to choose from. So there's really no limit to what we can offer or what you can choose from. If you don't find one that suits you, you can have your architect submit your own plans. And for a modest engineering and design fee, the modular manufacturer will generally be able to build it. The bottom line, there's nothing that can be done on site that can't be done in a factory even better.
That's right. So in our series, we've taken a really deep dive into how exactly the process goes to determine your exact location, orientation, and size of your ADU. And obviously, those things are going to affect things like floor plans. So, Greg, could you tell the folks at home what the new ADU setback requirements are for existing structures right now?
Well, that changed a lot since January 1. Cities and counties cannot require setbacks to the side and rear property lines of more than 4 feet. If they adopt, whether they adopt an ordinance or not, they can call out separations between the detached ADU and the primary dwelling. Many of them, if they're calling it out, 6 feet generally, sometimes 10. But at the same time, for a new detached unit, or for actually any ADU, the cities and counties must accommodate at least an 800 square foot ADU. That's even factoring in floor area ratios, lot coverage, lot size, etc. Generally, though, an 850 square foot ADU is allowed if it's a studio or one bedroom, and if it's more than one bedroom, the cities and counties have to accommodate 1,000. But again, in all cases, the cities and counties have to allow at least an 800 square foot with 4-foot maximum side and rear setbacks, including a side street setback.
Got it. So just to help the folks at home clarify that a little bit further, are you saying that if there is a current existing structure, including side streets, that there is no setback requirement just so long as it meets fire safety requirements?
No. If you construct a new building for an ADU, the city and county cannot require the setback to the side and rear property line to be more than 4 feet. If you had an existing building that you wanted to convert to an ADU, there are no setback requirements other than the fire and safety. So you get into the building code then and not the zoning code because you're converting an existing building.
So
Yeah.
Greg, are there any structures that are specifically not included or that may have special requirements for setback laws?
Well, if it's an accessory structure, an ADU can be, John, if you're talking about an ADU being created by converting an existing structure, it can either be created in an existing primary dwelling or in an existing accessory structure, such as a detached garage, a workshop, etc. And if you create it within an existing, the setbacks do not, for zoning, do not come into play. Only those for the building code. So if you had an existing accessory structure, essentially at the property line, and you wanted to convert that into an ADU, the building codes come into play, and you may have to do additional treatments to the side of the building or not have an opening in those walls which are in a certain distance from those property lines as called out in building code.
Thank you.
Got it. Okay. So, John, if the desired ADU just simply wouldn't fit based on those things that Greg just mentioned, no matter how much we adjust the location, orientation, what would you recommend in that case?
Well, we'd suggest a smaller floor plan for openers. If your goal was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ADU and it just doesn't fit, then you might want to or have to consider going to a 3-in-1, a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, or a 2-bedroom, 2-bath.
So folks, I just want to remind you, really keep the end user at the forefront of your decision making here. This is really going to help guide you through the choice of what to give up in a scenario like that if it's too tight of a fit, either the bedroom or the bathroom.
Exactly. So Greg, since we're on the subject of a tight fit, can you go over the state minimum and maximum regarding ADU size?
Well, on a new detached structure, state law alone limits the size of a new detached at 1,200 square feet. Cities and counties with an adopted ADU ordinance may reduce that, but not less than 850 for a studio or 1-bedroom, and not less than 1,000 square feet for more than 1 bedroom. They can also, at the same time, with an ordinance, allow a size greater than the state law limits. There are some jurisdictions in the north part of the state or in the San Francisco Bay Peninsula that are allowing over 2,000 square foot ADUs, but those would be allowed with the city and county's approval. But as I said earlier, John, the city and county always have to allow at least an 800.
Got it. Okay, so if I can't fit a state minimum of 800 square feet on a lot based on the current lot sizes and setback requirements, what are some of the options?
No. Let me clarify there. It's not a state minimum. That at least an 800 square foot must be allowed. If someone wanted to build a 400 or 500 square foot, that is absolutely their wish. But the cities and counties cannot require the size to be less than 800 square feet, no matter lot size, lot coverage, etc. Which means they might even build it. You know, if they qualify for certain standards under one part of the law state law says that they might even be allowed to build them in the front yard.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Wow. So remember, folks, if anything we're covering right now is generating any questions, please type them into the question box so that we can cover them during the session. So, John, let's move forward into the specific architectural styles a little bit, can we?
Well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we have potentially hundreds of design ideas to pull from, so the same rule applies. But here's a few examples. There's a California ranch, which is a low-profile slab on grade traditionally and typically. And there's a California bungalow, which tends to be a raised foundation, a perimeter wall. And there's Mediterranean, there's Spanish, there's Mexican, there's Southwestern, there's contemporary, and even modern contemporary, just to name a few.
So, Greg, do any of the ADU laws reference anything in particular to the architectural style of an ADU?
Yes, they do. The law says that the city and county, if they adopt an ADU ordinance, they can control the maximum size, the minimum size, the height, the roof pitch, the style. Some of the ordinances that are adopted say that the finishes, the roof pitches and such must be similar, or they'll use other words sometimes in the ordinance, but similar to the style of the house on the lot. So they can do that. There are other, though, issues in the law that says if it qualifies for an ADU of less than 800 square feet, setbacks of 4 feet, height limitations, then those design standards that the city and county might have are not do not have to be complied with. So yes, but if it's a small enough, the design standards the city or county might put in their ordinance do not apply.
Wow. Okay.
So, Greg, are there any laws regarding setbacks to existing structures in relationship to the new ADU, such as age or permitted versus non-permitted structures, or even a specific type of structure that might eliminate the ability to add an ADU?
Well, there are setbacks they might require to the primary dwelling. Any other setbacks requirements goes back to the building code. There's one part of the ADU law that's safety is always an issue, and there's one part of the ADU law that says they must comply with local agency building codes. So setbacks to other structures could be addressed by that part of the ADU law.
Thank you.
Got it. So that being said, John, could you give us a brief overview of the different type of the roof types available, since this is obviously going to be affected by these new ADU laws?
Yeah, well, most traditionally with a manufactured or modular factory built, you're going to see straight gable. However, there are the hip roof options. Dormers can be put intermittently throughout the roof line. There's a shed roof, which is very popular nowadays. Then there's a flat or parapet wall, as they say. And then there's the rolled roof, which is kind of a new, more contemporary look. So now, Greg, can you think of any style of roof that wouldn't be allowed on an ADU?
Good question, John, and not that I can think of, but let me clarify one thing. Is if the ADU doesn't comply with some sections under this one part of the ADU law, that basically means that if the ADU does not exceed 800 square feet, there may be no restrictions on the appearance. But it's the size, it's the height, and it's the setbacks. If you go over 800 square feet, and the city and county has adopted an ADU ordinance, they can, in that ordinance, have constraints for roof pitch, color of the roof, color of the siding, etc. So if it's bigger than 800, then the city and county with an ordinance has more control about what the appearance of that ADU is.
No, thank you for that. Greg, again, this is for you. What are the maximum and minimum height restrictions for the typical ADU scenario?
We've got a couple things. One section says that the city and county cannot require the maximum height to be less than 16 feet. That's in all cases. They cannot require it to be less than 16 feet. If an ADU is created on a property with a multifamily property, it cannot be greater than 16 feet. So there's the sort of the magic number. If you so 60, you're pretty much guaranteed a 16-foot ADU no matter what you do.
Okay. So, hey, Greg, potentially, if we had a scenario where we couldn't get the floor plan or the footprint we wanted because the setbacks could we build a two-story even if it exceeds the height limit, or what are the parameters?
There is no height limitation for an ADU on a site with a single-family home in state law. If the city and county has adopted an ordinance, they can establish height limits, but it says they cannot require that maximum height to be less than 16 feet. They can disallow a two-story ADU. Some jurisdictions are limiting the height to 16 feet. Some are allowing greater, 24 feet, 30-something feet. It's up to the jurisdiction, again, if they adopt an ADU ordinance. Regarding the lot coverage and such, though, if they cannot, the cities and counties can't require the setbacks to the side and rear to be more than 4 feet. And if the city and county is requiring a setback from the ADU to the existing primary dwelling of some distance, often 6 feet, the rest of the yard is available to build an ADU. Lot coverage, setbacks, etc., don't come into play because still up to an 800 square foot ADU is allowed by state law.
Thank you.
So, Greg, you mentioned multifamily structures. Can you tell us how zoning affects one's ability to build an ADU or even a JADU?
Yeah, good question. A lot of people think about the zoning. The law instead says that a property, an ADU can be built in areas that allow single family and multifamily dwellings. It does not get into zones. So if you had a single family dwelling on a property, certain rules come into play. If you had a property with a multifamily on the property, no matter what the zone is, then other rules come into play. Multifamily for ADU purposes starts at a duplex. So a duplex is a multifamily. If you had a duplex on a lot, you're allowed to build, to create at least one ADU within the non-livable area of that structure, which most likely would be an attached garage. You're also allowed to create not more than 2 detached ADUs on a property that has a multifamily dwelling on it. So if you had a duplex, you could, on a property, you could create not more than 2 detached ADU structures on that same property. It's a little different than the single family. With the single family on a lot, you can create an ADU and possibly a JADU. For those people who don't know, a JADU is a junior accessory dwelling unit. One of the major parts of that is it's limited to 500 square feet, and it must be created within the walls of the primary dwelling, where an ADU could be created within the walls of the primary dwelling, or it can be a new structure on a lot someplace else as a detached.
Okay, got it. And we will be diving into some of those specific scenarios in just a little bit, so I appreciate you bringing those up now. So, John, let's go to the very top just to review the roof material choices briefly, can we?
Yeah, so there's rolled composition, rolled roofing material, basically for a flatter roof. A lot of times they use that as an underlayment for different types of roofing that go over the top of that, or as a temporary roof if it has to leave the factory with something on it. So they'll sometimes roll a composition or not a composition rolled roofing material over the roofs until it gets to the job site, and then they may want to change it from there to something like a tile or a cement type, or even a metal raised ridge metal roof. But then there's you got composition shingle as well, and they come in a variety of let's say guarantees anywhere from a 25-year roof to up to a 50-year roof. And that varies with the size and the shape of the actual shingle itself. Then there's a corrugated metal, which you can usually have done at the factory. And then there's a custom high ridge metal, which is usually done on site. But then again, that underlayment rule applies where it can't leave the factory unless it has some type of a formidable roofing material over it. However, the roof would have to be engineered to accommodate the load if you're going to use tile or cement type roofing material.
Got it. Now, is there any specific reason other than just personal preference that anyone would choose one material over another for their roof?
Yeah, using the San Diego County as an example, as well as many of the cities within the county of San Diego. Generally, if the backyard home can be seen from the street or neighboring properties, they may require that you meet the architectural and design motif of the primary resident. The same rule applies for an HOA, for example. Even though recent laws prohibit HOAs from not allowing an ADU on private residence, they can still require an architectural and design compliance.
Got it. So since we're metaphorically up on the roof still, Greg, could you give us the new requirements in regards to solar, specifically regarding detached modular ADUs?
Well, I was going to let you bring that one up. The California Energy Commission's new rules that went into effect January 1st generally require new detached structures to have photovoltaics or solar panels on the roof. If it's an addition or conversion to an existing building, they are not. We sort of defer all those questions to the California Energy Commission. They produce a little newsletter. I think it's on a quarterly basis. You can go to the California Energy Commission and look for that. The newsletter, it's called the Blueprint, and they have articles in that regarding all the various subjects on energy that the Energy Commission has. We have that site, that edition, the latest edition of that newsletter at the Housing and Community Development Accessory Dwelling Unit webpage. So if someone wanted to go to that, it's hcd.ca.gov and then type in for accessory dwelling unit and you'll find that. So again, to answer your question, if it's a new detached, expect to have solar panels on that structure.
So is it true that a HUD manufactured home versus a modular home?
Then I believe that's, John, I believe that is then exempt.
Okay, all right. That's great. That was the answer to my question.
Okay. Again, for the details, I mean, there are even some exemptions that a new detached might not have to have them based on natural shading or an adjacent building's shading, but California Energy Commission controls it. But yes, the HUD product, I understand, does not have to have the solar panels.
Okay, thank you. So that being said, Jeremy, could you bring us back to the HECM loan for a moment and clear up some of the more common questions and concerns people might have about considering one?
Sure, John. So first and foremost, I want to cover this one. You still own your home, not the bank. Secondly, you can still leave it to your heirs. And most beneficially, there is no set payback schedule for this loan.
So when does the loan have to get paid back?
So it's based on one specific trigger event. There's several, but it's only one of them has to happen. So the first one is when the last borrower on the loan either passes away or moves out of the home for more than 12 months. That's the first one. Or if the homeowner fails to pay their property taxes or homeowner's insurance on time is another one.
So are there any other trigger points or trigger events?
Yeah, just one, and that would be failing to maintain your home.
So what does this mean for someone who chooses a HECM loan?
Well, just as long as you meet your loan obligations, you can stay in the home and you will never be required to make a monthly mortgage payment.
And what are those obligations?
They're pretty simple. So first, you keep the home as your primary residence. Secondly, you pay your property taxes and homeowner's insurance on time. And lastly, just maintain your home.
Well, that sounds easy enough. Now let's go further back into the specifics of the ADU. Greg, can you tell us if someone has a single family residence zoned R1, how many JADUs, attached ADUs, and detached ADUs could be built?
Okay. Again, zoning does not come into play here. It is what's the use on the property. So if you had a lot with a single family dwelling on it, and that is, by the way, the laws change. It's either an existing or proposed. If you had a bare lot, what I mean by that is if you had a bare lot, you can create a brand new home and at the same time create an ADU or a JADU when you're building that new home. But now let's get back into your question. If you have a single family dwelling on the property, the law allows you to create an JADU within the walls of that primary dwelling and a new construction ADU that's detached from the primary dwelling. So you can create up to an ADU and a JADU and the primary dwelling on a property. The JADU, as I said earlier, is limited to 500 square feet. The new detached ADU would be, as under that situation, is limited to 800 square feet. If you didn't do the ADU and the JADU, the ADU can be up to 1,200 square feet.
All right. So could someone use an attached garage as the existing structure and convert the whole thing to a JADU regardless of the size? You might have already answered that. Or
no, not the size. You can create a JADU in an attached garage, not a detached garage. It still has a limit of 500 square feet. But that's, you take a look at it, 2-car garage, and the size of those is around 400 square feet. So you could create a JADU within an attached 2-car garage and not even come close to the size limitation of 500 square feet. A JADU, by the way, not only with the size, it can share the bathroom with the primary dwelling. It does have to have an efficiency kitchen, but you can go from the JADU into the primary dwelling to use the bathroom. Where if you converted a garage for an ADU, it has to have its own kitchen, its own bathroom, sleeping and living area.
Got it.
Okay.
So here's a question. Speaking of that JADU, can you clear something up for me, Greg? So to build a JADU, do I have to do that all inside of the current existing space, or am I allowed to add any additional square footage to the existing structure just to build that JADU?
It's a good question. Because the law says, the JADU law, it's different than the ADU law. It says within the walls of the primary dwelling. So if you went in, you added on to your primary dwelling, now you have new walls. So you could create then a JADU within those new walls of the primary dwelling. Would a city or county allow you to expand onto your primary dwelling as part of the process to create a JADU? That is outside the state law. That's sort of an arrangement you'd make with your city and county. You could do it in 2 steps. They might they could allow you to do it one. That's between the applicant and the city and county.
Got it. So maybe a potential clever way to maybe just do some order of operations is if someone had an attached garage and they were looking to convert that to a JADU, they could do that. And then if there was the space allowed, potentially build another garage and then do that would that be considered an attached ADU attached to that garage then? The new garage?
Well, I'm not sure if I understand your question there, but you can convert the garage to an ADU or a JADU. One advantage of creating the garage to an ADU rather than a JADU is that those displaced parking spaces that were providing covered parking for the primary dwelling do not have to be replaced on site. That exemption does not exist in JADU law. So if you wanted to convert the existing attached garage to an ADU, those parking, and there wasn't some place to provide parking for those displaced parking places, the ADU must be permitted, and the city and county cannot require parking on site, or especially they cannot require a replacement parking structure.
Can we take you with us anytime we have to go out and meet and greet a client? All right, so Greg, what if, all right, I'm going to throw another scenario at you. What if I had a detached 2 units? How many JADUs and attached ADUs and detached ADUs can I build?
Do you mean 2 single-family detached on a lot? Is that what you mean by detached?
Well, yeah, I guess that would be, or maybe a duplex, a detached duplex.
Well, what do you mean by a detached duplex?
Well, let's say, all right, let's go back to my initial question. Two
Yes.
Primary residents, I guess, on the same lot.
Detached from each other, not connected?
Yes.
Then you could create one ADU on that lot.
180. Okay. All right. So
one ADU on that lot. If it was now let's take it to the next one. If it was 2 attached units, such as a duplex, 2 units on a single lot, now it's a multifamily, and you could create an ADU within non-livable area of that structure, such as an attached garage. You could also do not more than 2 detached structures. So if you had a duplex on a lot and it had ample lot size, you could build 2 more units on that lot. Detached from that duplex structure.
all right. Very good. Okay. That being said, great. Let's say I had an 8-unit property. Now I'm really reaching. How many JADUs?
Well, okay.
These new laws.
That's an easy one, John. If you take a look at the JADU law, which has been in effect, was brand new for 2017, and there's only been a few little changes this last year to the JADU law, but the JADU is limited to 1 JADU on a site zoned for single family with a single family dwelling on the lot. Therefore, a JADU is not allowed with a multifamily structure. And again, that includes a duplex. So if there's more than 1 single family home on the property, a JADU is not allowed on that property. Now, your question was an 8-unit multifamily dwelling structure. That multifamily dwelling structure may have at least 1 ADU allowed to be created within that structure, but it must be created from non-livable space. You can't split up an existing dwelling unit within that multifamily dwelling structure. Now, if you had ample room in that same building that was non-livable, the number of ADUs that can be created within that building from non-livable is limited at 25% of the units. So 25% of those 8 units is 2. So if you had an ample storage rooms, hallways, closets, an attached garage, you could create 2 ADUs within that multifamily dwelling structure.
All right. Well, okay. So could you touch on the 25% rule regarding the multifamily property? I think you just did.
Yeah. So let me just clarify that a little bit more. Always with a multifamily, if you have non-livable space within a multifamily dwelling structure, those non-livable spaces, not part of one of the units, can be converted into an ADU. Always at least 1 if you have sufficient non-livable, or 25% of the unit. So if you had a 4-plex, 25% of the 4 is 1. So you don't get any more than 1. If you had a 6-unit apartment building, 25% of that is 1.5. You still only are limited to 1. There are a few jurisdictions around that are allowing that number to be rounded up. But if they don't, you'd have to get to your 8-unit multifamily dwelling structure, and 25% of the 8 is 2. So if you had ample non-livable space within that multifamily dwelling structure, you could create 2 ADUs within that structure. And it goes on from there. If you had a 12-unit building, you could go 3. 16, you could go 4. See what I'm saying?
I do. On that subject now, I'm actually working with a client that's got a 16-unit apartment building with outdoor parking. So could you take some of those outdoor parking stalls and convert those?
No.
No? Okay.
It says within the multifamily dwelling structure.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you for
So
clarifying.
if you had two-car garages attached to that multifamily dwelling structure, and you had 16, we'll go back to the basics. 25% of the 16 is 4. This is really getting a little wild, but you could create 4 ADUs within possibly those 2 attached garages. Okay.
Got it. Yep. All right. So just to clarify, it doesn't matter if it's a 2-unit or a 12-unit. Zoning, getting back to zoning, that doesn't affect the ability to build an ADU, correct?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The only time that zoning comes into play is in one section of the law that says zoning standards don't apply. And in that section, it says if the property is zoned for residential or mixed use. There's some zones then that fall out of that. So you could have, for instance, an agricultural zone that the use tables in the zoning code might allow a single family dwelling. But this ministerial process in the code says it must be residential or mixed use. So to be able to build an ADU without the development standards of the zoning code, it would have to be in those 2 zones, not another zone that might otherwise allow a single family dwelling. A little complex. It's there's all a lot of twists and turns in the law.
Yeah, there's nothing that's been real easy about this from the get-go. That's for sure. Well, thank you for that, Greg.
Thanks so much for clarifying all that. So, folks at home, I just want to give you a quick few reminders before we open this up to any of the live Q&A portion. I know we've covered a ton of this and probably answered a lot of your questions just walking through this stuff with Mr. Nicholas. So if you have specific questions for the ADU, please reach out to Crest Backyard Homes. Their website is www.crestbackyardhomes.com. Go to their site, fill out their contact page, and they will be in touch with you. If you have specific questions for the HECM Loan, please reach out to Golden Age Financial Solutions. Their website is www.goldenaf, that's A as in Apple, F as in Frank.com. Go to the site, find the contact page, fill it out, and one of their reps will call you shortly. These sessions are recorded, so you can watch them over and over again, share them with your friends and family. Please ask that you do. So we want to remind you, be on the lookout for the next webinar on Tuesday. Look out for that next invoice. Lastly, I just wanted to say thank you again to Greg for being so gracious with his time and knowledge. We really do appreciate it. And with that being said, I would just like to open it up for any last minute Q&A that we did not touch on specifically. Wow, we just got to thank you. It sounds like, it really looks like we answered pretty much everything everyone had as far as questions are going through this just line by line. So, Greg, thank you so much again for being with us. John, did you have anything else to add?
No, I thank you, Greg. It's always fun mixing it with you. I learn something every time I talk to you.
If there are questions regarding ADU at the state level, people can send it to adu@hcd.ca.gov.
Well, and I do have to thank Greg again too. He has been wonderful for the last 4 years that I've had the privilege of getting to know him. He's been very responsive. He's readily accessible. He's so, and I hate to use this word on you, but he's so untypically a bureaucrat. He is very much a hands-on guy, and he doesn't mind getting his hands dirty and jumping into the trenches.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, we've got from the individual viewers, Greg, they really appreciate you as well. And we actually did have one last question for you, John, and that was, Can I order a modular home that already has a solar panel installed on it?
Not that has them installed on them. You wouldn't want that anyway, because they'd probably break by the time they're delivered to you. They go down the road about 65 to 70 miles an hour. They don't even ship modulars with tile roofs or stucco or any of that. That's all done on site. However, to answer the question, they do prepare them to be solar ready, as well as stucco ready, as well as tile ready. You get them engineered and designed to basically comply with all those requirements.
Got it. And then this one last one, Greg, this is a question for you. They're asking, please repeat that email address for questions about the ADUs.
Yes. ADU for accessory dwelling unit. That's ADU at HCD, that's for housing and community development, .ca.gov.
Got it. And let me just see if I can type that. So it's, you said hcd.gov.
Yeah, ADU at hcd.ca.gov.
ADU at hcd.ca.gov.
Correct.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, we're getting multiple thank yous and thank yous and thank yous. So, Greg, we want to be very cognizant of your time. So, John, if you don't have anything else to add.
I'm good. It was a very fruitful morning.
Appreciate you taking your Saturday with us. Thanks so much. And thanks, folks, for all joining us. We appreciate your time, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you.